The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in stunned silence as President Kyung-Suk Yoon stood at the central podium, the same place where Chancellor Grixtal had made his demands just 18 months ago. The Vorthak Empire has surrendered unconditionally, she announced, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. Emperor Grakthul signed the surrender documents 3 hours ago. The war is over. Ambassador Whisper of Stars, the ancient ethereal who had tried to protect humanity during that first meeting, finally found her voice. How? She asked, the word barely audible. The Vorthak had over 2,000 ships. They were the second most powerful military in the galaxy. President Yoon's expression remained calm and professional, while past tense. As of this morning, the Vorthak military no longer exists as a functional fighting force. Their leadership chose surrender over the complete destruction of their civilization. Admiral Hyun-Soo Park stepped forward with a datapad containing statistics that would be studied by military academies for centuries. In 18 months of warfare, human forces destroyed or captured 3,217 Vorthak vessels. We eliminated their entire command structure, dismantled their supply networks, and occupied 43 of their military installations. He paused, letting the numbers sink in. Human losses totaled 192 ships and approximately 15,000 personnel. The silence that followed was deafening. A galactic superpower had been completely defeated with losses that barely qualified as a skirmish by traditional standards. Dr. Seo Jin-oh, now serving as humanity's chief diplomatic officer, addressed the elephant in the room. I know what you're all thinking. How did a species you considered primitive and peaceful accomplish something that should have been impossible? She activated a holographic display that showed the true scope of human military preparation, hidden shipyards, secret weapons programs, intelligence networks that spanned the galaxy. Everything that had been concealed for 50 years was now revealed. We have been preparing for galactic warfare since the day we made first contact, she explained. Not because we wanted war, but because we learned from our own history that hoping for peace is not the same as being prepared for conflict. Intelligence. Director Ji-won Kang stepped up to provide the details that made the gathered delegates visibly uncomfortable. For 50 years we have been monitoring your communications, studying your military doctrines, mapping your psychological weaknesses. Every species represented in this chamber has been under continuous observation by human intelligence services. We know your fleet movements before your own admirals do. We understand your political structures better than your own leaders. We have detailed profiles of every major military commander, politician, and decision-maker in your governments. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Species that had treated humans as harmless newcomers realized they had been living under constant surveillance by master intelligence operatives. Former Ambassador Hyun-Woo Park, now serving as Earth's Secretary of Galactic Affairs, addressed the fear he could see in every delegate's eyes. We did not share this information because we preferred cooperation to domination. We hoped that by proving ourselves as peaceful partners, we could avoid the need for these capabilities. The Vorthak Empire's aggression forced us to reveal what we really are. We are not the naive newcomers you thought you knew. We are the dominant predator species from the most competitive world in known space. The implications hit different species in different ways. Chancellor Marthek of the Ethereal Collective spoke for many when she said, "We based our entire understanding of humanity on your cultural expressions and diplomatic behavior. We missed your true nature completely." General Talon Sharp of the Kralian military clacked his beak nervously. "You let us think you were weak. You encouraged us to underestimate you." "We encouraged you to see what you wanted to see," Dr. O replied. "Most species judge others by their own standards. You assumed that preference for peace meant inability to wage war. That was your mistake, not our deception." Dr. Jung-Sik Kim, the Federation's new Director of Interspecies Relations, outlined humanity's position going forward. "We do not seek to rule the galaxy. We have no interest in conquest for its own sake. What we want is simple: the assurance that no species will ever again mistake our preference for diplomacy as an invitation for aggression. Human military forces will remain visible and ready. Our intelligence networks will continue to monitor potential threats. Our weapons technology will continue to advance. This is not a threat. It is a promise that we will never again be caught unprepared." The transformation in galactic politics was immediate and dramatic. Species that had dismissed humanity now competed to offer alliance treaties and trade agreements. The Zephyrian Merchant Guild, which had once spoken of humans as charmingly naive, now begged for exclusive trading partnerships. The Kralian military, proud warriors who had once clicked their beaks in amusement at human weakness, formally requested military exchange programs to learn human tactics. Even the ethereal collective, Ancient and Wise, admitted they had much to learn from humanity's approach to interstellar relations. Captain Soo-hyun Lee stood on the bridge of the UFS Seoul, humanity's newest flagship, as it patrolled the former Vorthak space. Her ship represented everything the galaxy now understood about humans. Sleek and powerful, bristling with weapons that could reduce planets to ash, carrying both colonists ready to build new worlds and soldiers ready to defend them. "Status report," she ordered her tactical officer. "All Vorthak systems are secure, Captain. The colonization ships are beginning settlement operations on 12 worlds. Defense platforms are operational around all major installations." Soo-hyun nodded, looking out at the stars that had once belonged to humanity's enemies. Now they would become homes for human families, protected by human military might that no one would ever again underestimate. In the former Vorthak capital, now under human administration, Governor Sang-woo Kang oversaw the transition from empire to protectorate. The Vorthak people, once proud conquerors, now worked alongside human administrators to rebuild their shattered civilization. "How do they bear it?" asked Veltar, the former Vorthak tactical officer who now served as a liaison. "To be so completely defeated?" Sang-woo considered the question carefully. "Your people fought for dominance and glory. When you lost everything those concepts meant to you. Humans fight for survival and security. When we win, we rebuild what we've protected." Young-ho Nam, the historian who had predicted this outcome, now taught at the new Galactic University on New Geneva. His most popular course was the Terran Paradox, Understanding Humanity's Place in Galactic Civilization. Students often ask me how the galaxy's most peaceful species became its most feared military power, he told his mixed class of human and alien students. The answer is simple. We were never peaceful by nature. We were civilized by choice. For millions of years, humans survived on a world that tried constantly to kill us. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, predators, and most dangerous of all, other humans. We became the ultimate survivors not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we were the most adaptable. When we reached the stars, we chose to use that adaptability for cooperation instead of conquest. We hoped the galaxy would accept us as partners, rather than forcing us to prove our dominance. The Vorthak Empire's mistake was believing that our choice to be civilized meant we had forgotten how to be dangerous. A young ethereal student raised her hand. "Professor, are humans still dangerous now that the war is over?" Young-ho smiled, but there was something in his expression that made several alien students shift uncomfortably. "Humans are always dangerous. The difference is that now everyone knows it. A predator that hides its nature is terrifying when revealed. A predator that openly shows its capabilities is simply respected." The story of humanity's rise from underestimated newcomers to galactic superpowers became legend. The phrase that had started it all, "Congratulations, you just declared war on the universe's most lethal species," became a common saying throughout the galaxy. It was inscribed in both human languages and galactic standard on a memorial in the Galactic Council chambers, where Chancellor Grixtel had once stood in arrogant confidence. Below it in smaller text was humanity's new motto for interstellar relations: humanity, peaceful by choice, lethal by design. The galaxy had learned its lesson. In the years that followed, no species would ever again mistake human kindness for human weakness. The universe had discovered that its most dangerous predators were also its most gracious diplomats, and that combination made them more powerful than any empire built on fear alone. Humans had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had earned its respect through strength, its cooperation through wisdom, and its peace through the clear understanding that some prices were too high to pay. The sleeping giant had awakened, and the universe was a safer place because of it. Admiral Zekamor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the Kepler system grow larger on the main screen. Behind him, 300 Vorthak warships moved in perfect formation. It was the largest battle fleet the Empire had sent anywhere in 50 years. Pathetic, he said, looking at the sensor readings. The humans had maybe 50 ships total, and most of them looked like converted civilian vessels. This will be over in hours. His tactical officer, Veltar, reviewed the enemy positions. Sir, the human ships are not forming proper battle lines. They appear to be scattered throughout the system randomly. Zekimor laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Of course they are. They know nothing of real warfare. We will crush them like insects and then take their worlds. What neither Vorthak officer understood was that the human ships weren't scattered randomly. They were positioned exactly where Admiral Seung-ho Park wanted them. Each ship had been placed to take advantage of asteroids, gravitational fields, and hidden weapon platforms that the Vorthak couldn't detect. All ships, this is Admiral Park, came the calm voice over human communications. Remember, we're not here to fight fair. We're here to win. Execute Plan Wolf. The first sign that something was wrong came when the Vorthak fleet entered the outer asteroid belt. What looked like empty space suddenly filled with explosions as hidden mines and automated defense systems activated. But these weren't random attacks. They were coordinated strikes designed to force the Vorthak ships into specific areas. Captain Yujin Kang commanded the UFS Incheon, one of the human ships that appeared to be retreating from the Vorthak advance. She led 12 enemy ships deep into an asteroid field, staying just ahead of their weapons range. They're following us right into the trap, her tactical officer reported. Good, Yujin replied. Let them think they're hunting us. The Vorthak ships chased the Incheon deeper into the asteroids exactly as planned. They were so focused on their target that they didn't notice the warning signs around them. The asteroids weren't natural. Many had been hollowed out and filled with human weapon systems. When Yujin gave the signal, the asteroids came alive. Hidden fighters poured out of concealed bays while automated turrets opened fire from every direction. The Vorthak ships found themselves trapped in a crossfire with no way to retreat. This is impossible, Veltar shouted as he watched 12 of their ships disappear from his sensors. How did they hide so many weapons? But that was just the beginning. All across the system, similar traps were closing. Human ships that had seemed helpless revealed hidden weapon systems far more advanced than anything in the galactic databases. Their shields absorbed Vorthak fire, while their own weapons cut through enemy armor like it was paper. Lieutenant Commander Subin Lee sat in the Combat Information Center of the human flagship, watching her screens with satisfaction. The AI systems she had designed were working perfectly. Every time the Vorthak tried a new tactic, the human computers analyzed it, predicted the next move, and developed countermeasures. Their weapons are impressive, she told Admiral Park, but they're designed to fight enemies who use the same technology they do. They can't adapt to our systems because they don't understand how we think. The real shock came when human ships started doing things that violated every rule of galactic warfare. Instead of fighting in neat formations, they attacked like wolves, appearing from nowhere, striking hard, and disappearing before the enemy could respond. They used asteroids as shields, gravity wells as weapons, and electronic warfare to blind and confuse their enemies. Admiral Zekimor watched his fleet being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight properly. Why won't they stand and fight like warriors? He demanded. His communications officer looked up from her station. Sir, we're receiving a message from the human admiral. Put it through, Zekimor ordered. Admiral Park's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm and professional, like he was discussing trade negotiations instead of warfare. Admiral Zekimor, Park said politely, I wanted to explain something to you. Your species fights for honor and dominance. You have rules about how warfare should be conducted, codes of honor that make combat predictable. Park's expression didn't change, but his words carried a chill that made even veteran Vorthak warriors uncomfortable. Humans don't fight for honor. We fight to survive. We fight to protect our families. We fight to win by any means necessary. There are no rules in human warfare except victory. The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthak bridge in uncomfortable silence. On the surface of New Busan, Colonel Woo Jin Kim watched Vorthak landing ships descend through the atmosphere. The enemy was finally attempting a ground assault, thinking they could at least secure the planet while their fleet dealt with the human ships. They were about to learn another lesson about human warfare. The Vorthak ground forces were impressive, 10,000 warriors in powered armor, supported by heavy weapons and combat vehicles. They had conquered worlds before and expected the human colonists to surrender once faced with overwhelming force. Instead, they found a planet that had been turned into a weapon, Chanwu Park. A mining foreman who had become a resistance leader watched the enemy forces land in what looked like perfect positions: open ground, good visibility, multiple escape routes, exactly what any military academy would recommend. "Now," he said into his communicator. The ground beneath the Vorthak forces erupted. Mining charges that had been placed weeks ago turned the landing zones into craters, but that was just the beginning. As the surviving enemy forces tried to regroup, they discovered that every building, every tunnel, every piece of equipment had been turned into a weapon or a trap. Hyojung Lim, an engineer turned guerrilla fighter, had spent her entire adult life learning how to move massive amounts of rock and metal. Now she used that knowledge to collapse tunnels on enemy forces, redirect underground rivers to flood their positions, and turn mining equipment into improvised weapons that no military academy had ever trained soldiers to face. The Vorthak warriors were brave and well-trained, but they had never fought an enemy that used an entire planet as a weapon. Every street was a kill zone, every building was a fortress, every civilian was a potential threat who knew the terrain better than any invader ever could. Dr. Ye-Jin Choi, the human fleet's xenopsychologist, monitored Vorthak communications throughout the battle. What she heard confirmed her theories about their psychology. "They're breaking," she reported to Admiral Park. "Vorthak culture is based on dominance hierarchies. They understand enemies who are stronger or weaker than them. They don't understand enemies who fight using completely different rules. Their communications are full of confusion and fear," she continued. "They keep asking how humans learned to fight this way. They can't comprehend that we've been fighting like this for thousands of years." Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle through news broadcasts and military intelligence networks. What they saw shattered everything they thought they knew about warfare. The peaceful humans, the species that smiled too much and asked too many questions, were systematically destroying one of the galaxy's most feared military forces, and they were doing it using tactics that no other species had ever seen. Communications specialist Tai Min Han made sure that every major galactic news network received footage of the battle. He wanted everyone to see what happened when you threatened human families. The images that spread across the galaxy showed Vorthak ships fleeing from human forces, proud warriors retreating in panic, and an entire invasion army being defeated by colonists who refused to run. By the end of the first day, Admiral Zekmore's mighty fleet had been reduced to fewer than 200 ships. The ground forces had either surrendered or been eliminated entirely, and the humans had accomplished this while suffering minimal losses. As night fell over the Kepler system, Admiral Zekmore sent a desperate message to the Vorthak homeworld. "Send reinforcements," he transmitted. "Send everything we have. These humans, they don't fight like any species in our databases. They fight like something that should have destroyed itself long ago, but somehow learned to turn that destruction against others instead." The message was intercepted by human intelligence, as all Vorthak communications had been for 20 years. In her command center, President Yoon read the transcript and smiled coldly. "Good," she said to her advisors. "Let them bring everything they have. It's time the galaxy learned what humans are really capable of when we stop pretending to be civilized." The massive crystal station floated in space like a diamond against the stars. Inside its glowing halls, representatives from dozens of worlds gathered for the weekly Galactic Council meeting. The air buzzed with the sounds of different languages being translated through universal communicators. Hyunwoo Park sat quietly in the human section, watching the other delegates argue. He had been Earth's ambassador for 3 years now, but he still felt new compared to the others. Some of these beings had been doing this job for centuries. Their species had been traveling between stars when humans were still fighting with sticks and stones. The humans were the youngest members of the galactic community. 50 years ago, they had figured out how to travel faster than light. The other species had welcomed them politely, the way adults might welcome a curious child to their conversation. Humans were seen as eager learners who asked too many questions and smiled too much. Today's meeting was different, though. Chancellor Grixtel of the Vorthak Empire stood at the center of the room, his dark armor gleaming under the lights. He was tall and broad, with skin like gray stone and eyes that glowed red. When he spoke, his voice sounded like metal scraping against metal. "The matter is simple," Grixtel announced, looking around the room, The Kepler system contains resources that the Vorthak Empire requires. The primitive humans currently living there will remove themselves within 1 standard month. Hyunwoo felt his stomach drop. The Kepler system had 3 human colonies with nearly 2 million people. These weren't soldiers or explorers. They were families who had built new lives on those worlds. Ji-hye Kim, the human military advisor, sat beside Hyunwoo. Her face stayed calm, but her hands gripped the armrests of her chair. She had been a captain in Earth's space fleet before becoming a diplomat. She knew what this meant. "Chancellor," Hyunwoo said, standing up slowly, "perhaps we could discuss sharing the system. Humans are good at mining, and we could work together." Several delegates from other species made soft sounds that might have been laughter. The ethereals, who looked like tall, thin ghosts, whispered among themselves. The Kralians, proud warrior birds with bright feathers, clicked their beaks in what Hyunwoo had learned meant amusement. Chancellor Grixtal turned his red eyes toward the human section. "Your species has been in space for barely 50 of your years. You know nothing of true power or real war. The Vorthak Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We have turned entire worlds into glass and ash. You will move your people, or we will move them for you." An old ethereal named Whisper of Stars spoke up. "Chancellor, perhaps this is too harsh. The humans are still learning galactic politics. They mean no harm." "Yes," added Talon Sharp, a Kralian general. "They are like young birds who have not yet learned to fear the hawk. Give them time to understand." Hyunwoo felt heat rise in his cheeks. They were talking about humans like they were children or pets. Even their friends saw them as weak and harmless. "The Vorthak Empire does not negotiate with inferior species," Grixtal said. 1 month. Remove your people or face the consequences." The session ended with a formal vote. Most delegates sided with the Vorthak Empire, not because they wanted to, but because they feared what would happen if they didn't. The Vorthak military was the 2nd largest in the galaxy, and everyone knew they used it without mercy. As the delegates filed out, Hyunwoo overheard conversations that made his blood run cold. Species he had thought were friends spoke about humans in pitying tones. "Poor things," said a Zephyrian merchant. "They were lucky to survive this long." "Too soft for real galactic politics," agreed another. "They will learn or they will disappear." Dr. Sujin Lee, Earth's main scientist on the station, walked up to Hyunwoo. She had been listening to the conversations too, and her face was pale. "They really think we're helpless," she said quietly. "Maybe we are," Ji-hye replied, but there was something hard in her voice that Hyunwoo had never heard before. Back on Earth, Admiral Taehyung Choi received the message from the Galactic Council in his office overlooking Seoul Spaceport. Ships came and went through the atmosphere carrying people and goods to the stars. It looked peaceful, almost like a scene from a vacation advertisement. Choi read the message 3 times before calling his staff. Colonel Mi-young-han arrived first, followed by General Dongwoo Lim. Both had been soldiers before humanity reached the stars, and both understood what this meant. "How many ships do we have in the Kepler system?" Choi asked. 47 military vessels, Han replied, plus about 30 civilian ships that could be armed if needed. "The Vorthak Empire has over 300 ships in their main fleet," Lim added. "This isn't a fight we can win with standard tactics." Choi nodded slowly. He had expected this day would come eventually. Humans were new to the galaxy, but they weren't naive. They had been preparing for something like this, just hoping it wouldn't happen so soon. At the Terran Defense University, Young Ho Nam was teaching a class about galactic history when the news arrived. His students, young people who had grown up believing in peaceful cooperation between species, looked shocked and scared. One student raised her hand. "Professor, what happens now? Do we really have to abandon the colonies?" Young Ho looked out the window at the city below. Millions of people going about their lives not knowing that everything was about to change. "The other species think they know us," he said finally. "They see our diplomats and our trade ships and our scientific missions. They think we're soft because we choose to talk before we fight." Another student spoke up. "But we are peaceful. We don't want war." Young Ho turned back to the class. "There's a difference between being unable to fight and choosing not to fight. Our species conquered this entire planet before we ever left it. We survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters, and thousands of years of warfare against each other. We didn't become peaceful because we were weak. We became peaceful because we learned what the alternatives cost." He walked to his desk and pulled up a file on his computer. The other species evolved on easier worlds, or they developed space travel before they had major wars. They've never seen what humans are really capable of when we decide that diplomacy has failed. After class, Young Ho called his colleague Yunji Kang, who taught military history at the same university. "Have you heard the news?" he asked. "About the Vorthak ultimatum?" "Yes," she replied. "The whole planet's talking about it." "They have no idea what they've just done," Young Ho said quietly. "They think they're forcing a weak species to retreat. They don't realize they've just woken up something that conquered an entire world before it learned to reach for the stars. Do you think the government will fight?" Young Ho looked out his window again. In the distance, he could see the lights of military installations that most civilians didn't know existed. Earth had been preparing for this possibility for decades, just hoping it would never be necessary. "I think the galaxy is about to learn why humans don't fight wars," he said. "We fight extinctions." Emperor Grakthul sat on his throne of black metal, reading the reports from the Kepler system with growing rage. The mighty Vorthak fleet, pride of the Empire, had been humiliated by a species that barely knew how to travel between stars. "Impossible," he growled, crushing the datapad in his massive hand. 300 ships defeated by primitive humans? Admiral Zekmor must be lying to cover his cowardice. His military advisor, General Thakron, stepped forward carefully. "My lord, we have confirmed the reports through multiple sources. The humans were more prepared than we expected. Then we will show them what real preparation looks like," the Emperor declared. "Summon the Grand Armada. Every ship, every warrior, every weapon the Empire possesses. We will make an example of these humans that the galaxy will never forget." The order went out across Vorthak space. For the first time in a century, the Empire was mobilizing its entire military force. Over 2,000 ships began moving toward human space, the largest war fleet in galactic history. But humanity had not been idle during the weeks it took the Vorthak to organize their response. General Kyungmin Cho stood in the war room beneath Seoul, watching displays that showed human military assets across dozens of star systems. "Tatus. Report," he ordered. "All hidden shipyards are now active," reported Admiral Yoon Soo-han. "We have 1,500 additional warships coming online. The deep space fleets have emerged from dark storage and are moving to intercept points." Colonel Bora Kim updated the tactical situation. "Sir, we've implemented total war protocol across all human territories. Every ship, every station, every world is now part of our military network." General Cho nodded grimly. Total war protocol was something humanity had hoped never to use. It meant that the distinction between military and civilian targets no longer existed. Every human facility, no matter how peaceful it had seemed, was now a weapon of war. Captain Dong-hyun Lee commanded a stealth squadron that had been hidden in empty space for 15 years. His ships looked like asteroids on sensors, powered down and waiting. Now they came alive, moving through Vorthak territory like ghosts. "Target the supply depots first," he ordered his captains. "Cut their fuel lines, destroy their ammunition stores, hit their communication relays. Make them blind and helpless before they even reach human space." The Vorthak had never faced an enemy that could strike at their home territory while fighting a war light years away. Human stealth ships appeared throughout their empire, destroying infrastructure and disappearing before local forces could respond. But the real terror began when Specialist Yuri Park activated her cyber warfare protocols. Sitting in a bunker on Earth, she looked like any other computer technician. What she was actually doing would have horrified the galactic community if they had understood it. Initiating network infiltration, she reported to her supervisor, Jin Young Kim. Vorthak military systems are remarkably easy to access. They never considered that someone might try to turn their own technology against them. Within hours, Vorthak warships found their navigation systems giving false readings. Their weapons targeting computers began malfunctioning. Communication networks that had worked perfectly for centuries suddenly became unreliable. The humans were not just attacking Vorthak ships. They were attacking Vorthak technology itself. The psychological warfare campaign was even more devastating. Dr. Min Jun Shin had spent years developing biological agents that specifically targeted Vorthak physiology. Not to kill, that would have been too simple. Instead, the agents caused confusion, fear, and physical weakness that made it impossible for Vorthak warriors to fight effectively. Deploy the fear toxins at their forward bases, he ordered his team. I want their soldiers scared of their own shadows before they even see a human ship. Psychological Operations Director Hee-Jin Jung coordinated a campaign that struck at the very core of Vorthak identity. Captured Vorthak officers were shown carefully selected footage from human history, the Great Wars, the genocides, the lengths humans had gone to when fighting for survival. Watch carefully, she told a Vorthak admiral who had been captured during a raid. This is what your species calls the human World War II. In 6 years, humans killed over 60 million of their own kind, with primitive weapons, for reasons that most of them barely understood. The Vorthak officer watched in growing horror as human armies swept across continents, human aircraft destroyed entire cities, human submarines hunted other humans across vast oceans. This was before we learned to travel between stars. Hee-Jin continued calmly. Before we developed energy weapons or force shields or artificial intelligence. This is what we did to each other when we disagreed about politics. She switched to footage from more recent conflicts. This is what we called conventional warfare. We considered this normal everyday fighting. The weapons that destroyed your fleet at Kepler, we call those advanced technology. The tactics that confused your generals, we call those basic strategy. The captured officer was trembling now. You are monsters. No, Hee-Jin replied softly. We are humans. And you declared war on us. Fleet Admiral Sang Wukko implemented what human military planners called the Terran solution. Instead of waiting for the Vorthak Grand Armada to reach human space, human forces began striking at Vorthak's civilian infrastructure. Not to cause casualties. That wasn't the point. The attacks were designed to demonstrate that humans could reach anywhere in Vorthak space, at any time, without warning. When the orbital stations around the Vorthak homeworld suddenly went dark, the message was unmistakable. We can touch you, the human admiral broadcast on all Vorthak communication frequencies. We can reach your homes, your families, your most sacred places. Nothing in your empire is safe from us. Nothing is beyond our reach. The psychological impact was devastating. The Vorthak had built their empire on the idea that they were the strongest, most feared species in the galaxy. Now they discovered that there was something out there that could make them feel helpless and afraid. Ambassador Chang Ho-nam, who had replaced the peaceful Hyunwoo Park as humanity's war envoy, addressed the Galactic Council from the same chamber where this had all begun. The Vorthak Empire has exactly 72 hours to surrender unconditionally, he announced to the stunned delegates. If they refuse, we will demonstrate why our species conquered an entire world before we learned to leave it. You cannot be serious, protested the ethereal representative. The Vorthak have the second largest military in the galaxy. Chang Ho turned cold eyes toward the ethereal. They had the second largest military. What they have now is a broken fleet, a compromised infrastructure, and the growing realization that they picked a fight with something far more dangerous than they imagined. Chancellor Grikstal, who had started this war with his arrogant demands, now sat in his command bunker as reports poured in from across Vorthak space. Human forces were everywhere, striking at will, disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. How? He asked his remaining generals. How did a primitive species do this to us? General Thakron pulled up intelligence reports that painted a terrifying picture. Sir, we have been monitoring their communications since the war began. What we have learned changes everything. The reports showed the truth that the galaxy had missed. Humans were not a peaceful species that had happened to develop space travel. They were apex predators who had temporarily chosen cooperation over conquest. When that choice was taken away, they reverted to what they had always been. They have been preparing for galactic war since the day they made contact. Thakron continued. Every ship we saw, every technology they shared, every diplomatic gesture, it was all carefully designed to make us underestimate them. They studied us while we ignored them. They learned our weaknesses while we assumed they had none. They prepared for this war while we assumed they were incapable of fighting it. The final blow came when Emperor Grakthul received a personal message from President Yoon. Her image appeared on his private communication screen, and she looked as calm and professional as if she were discussing a trade agreement. Emperor, she said politely, I wanted to personally inform you that your Grand Armada will never reach human space. We have been tracking its movements since before it left Vorthak territory. By the time you receive this message, It will no longer exist as a functional military force. The Emperor felt something he had never experienced before: true fear. You have 72 hours to surrender, President Yoon continued. After that, we will begin the systematic dismantling of your civilization, not because we want to, but because you have left us no choice. Her image disappeared, leaving the Emperor alone with the reports of his empire's collapse. Outside his bunker, the night sky that had once been filled with the lights of Vorthak, ships now showed only darkness and the distant flashes of human weapons. The galaxy's second most powerful military force was being destroyed by a species that most people had considered harmless just months before. And the worst part was that the humans were doing it almost effortlessly, as if this level of warfare was something they had always been capable of, but had simply chosen not to use. For the first time in his long life, Emperor Grakthul understood what it meant to be truly afraid. 3 weeks had passed since the Vorthak ultimatum, and something unexpected was happening in the Kepler system. The evacuation ships that Earth had sent remained mostly empty. Instead of packing their belongings, the colonists were digging in. Sang-min Park, governor of New Busan Colony, stood before the cameras in his office. Behind him, through the large windows, people could see the city continuing its daily life. Children played in parks while their parents went to work. It looked normal, but everyone knew it wasn't. My fellow humans, Sang-min said, his voice steady and calm. Today I speak not just for New Busan, but for all 3 colonies in our system. We have received Earth's evacuation orders, and we respectfully decline to follow them. He paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. Every major news network was broadcasting this speech. Our grandparents didn't run from war on Earth, and we won't run from it here. This is our home now. We built these cities with our own hands. We turned empty worlds into places where families can grow and prosper. If someone wants to take that from us, they'll have to do it while we're still here. On Earth, President Kyung-suk Yoon watched the broadcast from her office in the Global Defense Center. The building was deep underground, built during the last Great War before humans reached the stars. Most people had forgotten it existed. The colonists have made their choice, she said to her advisors. Now we have to make ours. Fleet Admiral Won-jae Kim stepped forward. He was an old man who had served in Earth's military for 40 years. Madam President, we need to show you something. Something we've kept secret since we first made contact with the galactic community. The President nodded. She had been expecting this conversation for years. The Admiral led them to a secure briefing room where Dr. Haewon Shin was waiting. She was the head of Earth's Secret Military Research Division, a department that officially didn't exist. When we first met other species, Dr. Shin began, we realized something important. They all assumed we were weak because we preferred to talk instead of fight. We decided to let them keep thinking that. She activated a holographic display that showed the solar system. But this wasn't the solar system that other species knew about. Hidden among the asteroids were massive shipyards. In the empty space beyond Pluto, dark shapes waited silently. We've been building a real military for 30 years, Dr. Shin continued. Everything we showed the galaxy was just the peaceful face we wanted them to see. Our exploration ships, our trade vessels, our science stations, all real but not the whole truth. Commander Jin-Woo Lee stepped up to the display. We have 17 hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt alone. Each one has been producing warships using technology that's decades ahead of what we've shared with the galactic community. The President stared at the display. Ships that looked nothing like the friendly vessels the galaxy knew about filled the screen. These were built for one purpose only. How many? She asked quietly. 2,436 active warships, Admiral Kim replied, plus support vessels, automated defense platforms, and stealth fighters. We've been preparing for this day since we realized the galaxy wasn't as peaceful as it pretended to be. Captain So-Young Park, who commanded one of the secret fleets, brought up another display. Our weapon systems are also more advanced than anything we've revealed. We let them think our energy shields were weak, our weapons primitive. Every ship they've seen was built to look less dangerous than it really is. Minho Jang, head of military intelligence, joined the briefing. We've also been monitoring every major species for decades. We know their fleet movements, their communication codes, their strategic weaknesses. They never bothered to hide anything from us because they thought we were too primitive to understand. The Vorthak Empire communicates using quantum encrypted channels, he continued. But they never changed their encryption after making contact with us. They assumed we couldn't break it. We've been reading their military communications for 20 years. The most shocking revelation came from Da-Yun Kim, who ran Earth's Psychological Warfare Division. We've been studying how their minds work. Every species has psychological pressure points, things that frighten them, confuse them, or make them panic. The Vorthak are hierarchical warriors who fight for honor and dominance. They've never faced an enemy that fights purely to win. President Yoon absorbed all of this information, so we're not actually the helpless newcomers everyone thinks we are. No, ma'am, Admiral Kim replied. We're probably the most dangerous military force in this part of the galaxy. We just never wanted anyone to know that unless they forced us to show them. In the Kepler system, Jae Sung-oh commanded the local defense forces. He was reading reports from across the 3 colonies, and what he saw made him smile grimly. The colonists weren't just refusing to leave. They were turning their worlds into fortresses. Mining equipment was being converted into weapons. The same machines that had carved cities from rock were now being prepared to carve apart Vorthak ships. Asteroid mining platforms had become missile batteries. Even the civilian transport tunnels between cities were being rigged with defensive systems. The colonists had spent years learning to survive on harsh worlds. Now they were using that knowledge to prepare for war. Every farm, every factory, every home was becoming part of a defensive network that would make any invasion incredibly costly. They think they're coming to conquer some helpless colonies, Jae Sung told his staff. They're actually walking into a trap that's been 30 years in the making. Back on Earth, President Yoon made her decision. She activated the emergency broadcast system that would reach every human world simultaneously. My fellow humans, she began, for 50 years, we have walked softly among the stars. We chose diplomacy over conflict, cooperation over conquest. We hope to find our place in the galaxy through peace and mutual understanding. She paused, looking directly into the camera. Today, that path has been closed to us. The Vorthak Empire has demanded that we abandon our homes, our families, our future among the stars. They believe we will comply because they think we are weak. Her voice grew harder. They are about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being incapable of war. For millions of years, humans survived on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. We survived ice ages, volcanic winters, asteroid impacts, and plagues that killed most of our species. We survived by becoming the most adaptable, most determined, most ruthless survivors our world ever produced. We didn't become peaceful because we were weak. We became peaceful because we learned what the alternative cost. But when peace is no longer an option, when our families are threatened, when our very existence is at stake, we remember what we really are. She stood up, and her final words carried the weight of humanity's entire history. The Vorthak Empire thinks they have declared war on a species of peaceful explorers. They have actually declared war on the apex predators of Earth. May whatever gods they pray to have mercy on them, because we will not.